Well, I think I'm live. I'm not sure, but I think so. I can't see much from the. I can tell I am from the YouTube side, but I can't see anything. Restream doesn't give me anything from the um, LinkedIn side, so it may be my setup. I don't know. It shows me online, um, but I am not sure. So, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and all right. Um, So, prepping with IoT. That's what we're kind of framing this as, or what I'm framing this as for the evening, is utilizing IoT to prepare for disaster and other things. Mostly, it's really just projects that I have around my small homestead farm that need to get done, and because the homestead is, really there for this kind of a situation: COVID-19, coronavirus outbreak, zombie apocalypse, whatever you want to call it. We are here to be prepared. So, I do have a couple of projects that I'm going to be doing over the next few days. I'll be doing some live stuff, I'll be online, um, and we'll be, available to kind of adjust, take questions, and answer anybody's stuff as it comes on. So, um, all right, what are we gonna do? We're gonna use a Opto 22 as a base station control unit. We've got a Redline HMI. I've got a Raspberry Pi. I've got a bunch of ESP32s that we're going to set up with cameras. A gate that's going in at the beginning of the edge of my property. But the first project that I've really got to get done, first of all, because it's coming in springtime, and secondly, because this really fits with the theme, is I've got an egg incubator that does not work for us anymore. So that egg incubator, we're going to go ahead and get it back up and running. I'm going to use a Raspberry Pi with Codesys installed on it to turn that into the controller. So because the controller is no longer good, we're going to replace it and get the incubator back up and working. It's a cool little project, and so if you're interested in doing control with Raspberry Pi, or if you're interested in doing anything with Codesys, it'll be very interesting. Be kind of neat to work with. So, what do we need? Let me switch over here to my the scene. I'm not very good at this, so we'll see what happens. All right, so we're gonna start by installing something called Pin on our um, Raspberry Pi. Pin is not Noobs, but it's similar to Noobs, and it can be found both at the GitHub project, and you can download the latest version on SourceForge. Pin has lots of different features and options to it that you don't get with the Raspberry Pi Noobs. Mainly, the biggest one that I find is really the nicest is the fact that you can do VNC, as you see right here, right into the bootloader. This means that I don't have to have an extra monitor or keyboard for any part of the installation. From the time that I get the Raspberry Pi, um, all I need to do is download Pin, put it onto the SD card, and then I'd set some options in the command line, which we'll go through, and then I can go ahead and install the OS that I want to use. As you can see, we're installing Arch. I'm a big Arch Linux fan, and I think Arch is the right way to go as far as for a minimal distribution with many options as far as for um, different usability, different programming systems, and lots of different features because Arch has the AUR. If you're not familiar with Arch, or you want to do this with Raspberry Pi or with Raspbian or any of the other distros, that's fine. There's no reason why you have to use Arch. Um, but there will be some great discussion that I think will facilitate because using Arch is also going to cause me to install Codesys into a Linux container that's going to run a Docker. So I'm going to have a container within a container that's running on a Raspberry Pi. And so, for especially the control guys who are not very familiar or don't get a lot of experience using containers, this will be a really great project to kind of just get started with using Docker, with using the IoT stack, which is a Docker project, and using Linux containers. If you're not familiar with Linux containers, they're one of the most fantastic things ever, and I really like them. I like them much more than Docker, but we'll get to all that a little bit later. So to get started, the only thing you need to do is download pin from SourceForge and put this into the root of your SD card. So I happen to have it already installed, or I have to have it already downloaded here in my downloads. Right there on top. And I have got a SD card that I've recently reformatted. Here it is, called Untitled. And the only thing that I need to do to make the Raspberry Pi boot off of pin is go here, grab pin light, copy all the files inside of the folder, so I can just do a Control A, Control C, and then I'm going to drop that right into the root of my SD card. As soon as that's copied over, I don't need Etcher, I don't need anything else. I just need an SD card formatted to FAT, to FAT, DOS style formatting, and then the Raspberry Pi, or then the pin bootloader installed or dropped, copied right into the root of the SD card. Once that's done, we can make a couple of very quick changes. So, go here to my SD card. I'm looking for the file called recovery.commandline. When I open up the recovery.commandline, there are a couple of options that I want to add here. And these are easy to find. Let's get to the end of the line here. Where is it? Why is it giving me weirdness? Oh, it's because it's up there. Here we are at the end. We're going to add on a couple of things. If we look here in the documentation for pin, which is on GitHub, you just find the readme.pin or readmepin.emd. And as you scroll down, you can see there's a lot of documentation here. But what we are looking for is information about how to use pin headlessly. Yes, I have a spare monitor. Yes, I have a keyboard. I have several spare keyboards. But it is irritating to me to no end that I have to, for Raspberry Pi, hook the thing up and disconnect my keyboard from my laptop and hook it up to a monitor and all that stuff. This is the thing that I use pin for. So, we're just going to append VNC install. Or if you actually read down a little bit further, you can see that VNC share is actually the more updated, better way to go. If you install VNC install, that actually stops hooking up a monitor from being able to read or see anything through the HDMI port. If we do VNC share, the VNC share option here, that will allow either one to mirror each other. And then we've got a force trigger to force the pin installer to always open. And we also want to add, I think that's it, VNC share and force trigger. Or if you want to use the GPIO pins, you can actually set the GPIO pins on boot up to also trigger pin bootloader to pop up. So we're going to use force trigger, and we're going to use VNC share. So we'll add those things to the command line here. VNC share, force trigger. Once these two options are added, you just write that to that SD card. You can do this with any text editor. Doesn't have to be Emacs. Could be any text editor. And once that's done, we can take our SD card, eject it. Here, where's my finder? We can eject that and boot our Raspberry Pi right away. And the proper partitions will be made on the SD card in order for the bootloader to fit. Once it boots up, you're going to want to use a tool like, let's say, Angry IP to scan your network. And what you should be looking for is this hostname recovery. You can see how that's the Raspberry Pi. Hostname's recovery, it's .125 on my network. And when I use my VNC connector, that's what I need to point at. So, you also need to make sure you're going to port 5900. So when you configure this, here, let me disconnect and let me edit my options here. $125. Yeah, so we'll just make this actually recovery Raspberry Pi. So your host is going to be 192, 168, 125, but you want to go to whichever IP address your network sets this up as, and then you also want to go to port 5900. 5900 is very important. If you don't put that in there, you won't be able to get connected. And then starting up the VNC should get you this connection right here that you see. I'm looking at the Pi right now with pin and all of the options. If you need to do a Wi-Fi connection, you can actually set up a Wi-Fi connection here. I'm wired in, so I didn't need to do that. There's an online help menu, and then there's tons of options when you use pin to boot the OS that you intend to, or the distro that you intend to. I mean, as you can see, there's way more here than is included with Noobs, but it's a very Noobs-like interface that has been just built upon and expanded into something that's a little bit more useful. Got a few more options to it. So like I said, I'm going to install Arch. It's actually already installed. Once that's done, I can just go ahead and boot right into my Arch installation. So while that's happening, actually it's going to be very fast. Arch is one of the fastest to go. Let's see what we get. And Arch comes up with this Alarm Pi. It's very similar to, it's got an alarming system that's kind of already installed, so it's called Alarm Pi. The username is alarm is the password, and then with root, it's root, and root is the password. So if we want to get into we'll clear that out, and we'll SSH in here. Let me make this big enough so you can see it. So we're going to SSH into 192.168.1.125. Was that it? I don't remember. 126. So we're going to 126. Oh, I need to change. So I need to change my key. So it's going to be SSH keygen. Yep, there we go. -R126. There we go. You shouldn't have to do this. I have to clear my key out because I've tested this before, and now it's a different Pi. Come on. What happened there? Let me try this. No key found. No key found. I'm gonna have to bang this out of my known host just a second. Come on. Come on. Why is this doing this? Keygen. Oh, I know why. There we go. That's what I needed. So I'm going to need to set my user, which is going to be alarm at, and this is going to be alarm. There we go. Now I'm in. Woo! All right. So that was a quick lesson on how to clear your SSH keys if you actually need to. You can use that SSH keygen -R option that will clear out your SSH keys. But now we're back on track. Here we are in Arch Linux on the Raspberry Pi. Now I haven't done any other setup. The first thing we need to do is we're going to need to install. So I need to do Pacman. Pacman. It's init keys, I believe. It's actually here on a piece of documentation I wanted to show you. Right here. This is the Raspberry Pi for Arch ARM. And this gives you a really great installation guide. There it is, Pacman key.init. Oh no, cancel that. So I need to be root. As I said, it's root. Root is the password. And we're going to do Pacman key --init. That will get me a key file, and then we're going to populate Arch Linux. I think it's, is there a dash? No, it's just Arch Linux. Arch Linux ARM. And there it goes. So after I've got the keys, and those are in my database, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a Pacman minus big S YYU. And that's going to get me all of the information that I need. Yes, we're going to proceed with that. And this will be all the packages that we need. Now, there's some additional stuff that we can do after this is done to install sudo and to get our Pi prepared. But this is the first step that we need to take in order to get moving in the right direction of getting Code Assist installed. So that's all I've got for tonight, guys. This is how you get started with Arch Linux on your Raspberry Pi, and how you can actually do an install of Arch Linux on your Raspberry Pi without a separate keyboard and monitor. All these things can be done right through VNC and SSH. And we will kick this off tomorrow evening and go right into configuring Arch and then installing Code Assist. And we'll start writing logic in Code Assist to turn our Pi into a PLC. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. If anyone has any comments, let me know, and I'll be happy to respond. And if there's any additional content or anything I can do to help people out, I'd be happy to do that. All right, thanks, guys.